This is part of our What's New for 2012, part of our What's New series that we do every year. Let's go and get started here. In today's webcast, we're going to get into the assembly changes, configurations, and then also equation changes. This stuff's also outlined in the What's New PDF or the HTML guide. Help menu of SOLIDWORKS. What's new, and then you can grab the PDF. So this stuff is also in there as well. Let's go and take a look at the next slide here to give you a little bit of an outline of what we're going to be looking at. This is not in any particular order, but this is some of the stuff we're going to be looking at. There is a large design review that replaced the selective open option. Component dimension changes, that type of stuff. The equation one is kind of a big one this release. They've completely revamped it, and then kind of give us different ways of evaluating or looking at the stuff that we have. And then we'll actually go through and create some of these here too, so you'll be able to see all that. Alright, so go and bring up SOLIDWORKS just so you can kind of see the new interface. They've changed the logo on the background. They've kind of gone with a different style of font there. They've also carried that through the upper left corner there. You'll see that also reflected on the SOLIDWORKS' website as well too, so that's up there also. As far as functionality, everything else is still the same. So we still have our parts assemblies and our drawings, so all that's still the same. Let's see, let's go and shut off a couple of items. One of the things that might be mentioned in one of the other webcasts is our freeze bar showing up here at the top. I just want to bring that up just because that's been kind of one of the hot items for this release. I do want to point out where that gets turned on at. If I go into my options, and then on general here, enable freeze bar. I believe by default that's actually getting left off. The purpose of the freeze bar is the ability of actually preventing a part from going through a rebuild when you don't want to. Say if you had a part with 100 different features in it, then you would actually bring that down to a point where you're working at, and then everything above it wouldn't change. Some of the other stuff that's appeared, and you might see this in other webcasts, or may have already seen it in the first webcast we did. Big one is this command ones, so I can actually start typing in things, and it'll actually bring up the items that I'm looking for. This is a command search, so it's a faster way of getting to some of the other items. But let's go and get into the stuff that we're going to be talking about today. So, looking at our next slide here, when you open an assembly and it's looking for parts, you only need to point it to the same folder once. You don't have to actually point it towards every file. This is kind of a big one because SOLIDWORKS has always had the same search criteria for assemblies, and they've just recently revamped that so we don't have to go looking for all those. We'll see that the ability of editing flexible sub-assemblies in context of the top-level assembly, so we'll see that one as well. The SmartMate, the alt, it's actually been changed so it's a little bit easier to use. They've made some changes to that. Let's see. Oh, yeah, opening and making changes to the part. I'll talk about that one a little bit more when we get into the model. Folders and subassemblies. You don't have to have all the parts in sequence. Creates new subassemblies by selecting parts in the graphics area. That one I think is a big one for me just because I tend to like to work in the graphics area a little bit more. And then this one's borrowed from the sister product, SOLIDWORKS or 3D Via Composer, the tab and shift tab to hide things. So we'll take a look at that as well. and then we'll take a look at some of the other stuff there as well. But let's go and jump back into SOLIDWORKS here and let's take a look at some of these. Alright, so I've got a subassembly that we're going to be working on. I'm going to open it up. Right away we can see that we have parts that it's missing. It's looking at a different directory that I don't have. I'll go and do a find it myself, so I'll go and say yes to that. And in the past, I would actually have to go to the directory, point towards the part, open it, and do the same thing for every single part. So this time I'm going into my missing files 1 directory, and then I'll go and open that, and then it's going to go and load all those as much as it can until it actually gets to the next part, and see if it needs to load that as well. This one, just because I was working on it a little bit earlier, it would actually look for both directories. So I'm going to do a file find references here just so you can kind of see what's going on. So we actually have files coming from both directories. So either way, it's able to actually find everything else in that directory without having to point towards things. So I think that's kind of a real big help as far as time saving when you move parts and that type of stuff around. Let's see, so let's go and take a look at maybe the tab one. That one's actually pretty useful. So I've got my cursor in the graphics area. I'll go and just bring it over the top of a part, and I'll hit the tab key on my keyboard, and it hides the part. Hit tab again, it hides the other part. If you need to bring a part back, I'll do a shift tab, and then it'll bring it back. And all I'm doing is pointing where that part used to be. So real easily I can actually hide parts quite rapidly. In fact, you can actually hold the tab key down, and then it'll go through and actually hide the parts for you when it gets to that particular point in turn. So that's, I think, a huge advantage of time there. So if I go and again shift tab, it'll actually bring the parts back when I'm pointing at them. Alright, so let's go and hide a few more here. The ability of editing a flexible subassembly. So we have a subassembly there that's pointed towards that, or used in this top level assembly. It is flexible, so I do actually get movement out of it. But yet if I needed to make a change, I can come in here, double click on a feature, come in there, and actually double click on that dimension and make the change there as well. So I'll go and set that up to some other value there, do a rebuild, and then I have the change there. So this is definitely one of those things that has saved us a little bit of time as far as making changes. One of the other things to make a note of is the fact that this particular subassembly has multiple configurations as well too. In the past, that was also another issue. The fact that we had to have a specific configuration active for us to make the changes to that configuration. No longer the case, so that's again another time saving. So in fact, I'll go and open up that subassembly here, switch it to a different configuration. Let's see here. Oh, my mistake. I'm thinking of a different part here. But yeah, different configuration of what that particular one might be using. So you can make the changes while they're in there. Alright, so let's go and shift that one back down. Notice that the modify dialog box has changed a little bit too. So that's also pretty useful that they've given us the ability of renaming our dimensions right here. We'll talk about that a little bit more. We can also specify the configuration if we want it for that config or all configs, so that's another item that's there. We still get the scrolling bar if we want to use that for changing dimensions, so that's still there. We do also still get the up and down arrows there as well. So all that stuff shows up in there. Okay, so we'll go and do a rebuild. The Alt key here. Some of you might have used the Alt key already or not. Alt essentially is a great way of smart mating. So I'm going to do a control drag to make a couple of copies of these parts. Oh, let's go and bring the pins back there. Want those pins showing back up. Oh. There we go. Alright, so in the past, if I grabbed an edge, hold the Alt key down, drag it up to another part, it would actually jump into place and start jumping around on you too quick. There's actually a slight delay now that allows us to get into position, and then we can let it go of our mouse button and let go of our Alt key. And again, if I do that again, Alt key, drag it over, it gives me a slight delay, and then it pops into location. So it's not jumping around like it used to. If you haven't seen that before, really useful one to get used to. Saves you a lot of time in mating, and it creates regular mates too. So in fact, if I look at the view mates here, I am still getting my concentric and my coincident for that particular part there. Grabbed an edge and it does both. Grab a face, it'll only do either a coincident or a concentric. Won't do both there. Oh, let's see. Doing parts in sub-assemblies here. Let's go and open up one of these sub-assemblies, or creating folders in sub-assemblies. In the past, if I wanted to create a folder, I'd have to have all those parts right next to each other. No longer the case. I can actually hold Control down, pick a few items out, and then right-click over one of them, and then go and do a Add to New Folder, and then I'll group those into a single place there. So now I can actually do things like suppress or hide everything in that particular folder without having to reorganize my tree. So that's another improvement there. Let's see, let's go and check off some of the stuff we're going through here. So we got the Smart Mate with the Alt key, possible fix sub-assemblies, tab. Oh, the create sub-assembly in graphics area. Yeah, let's jump back up to the top level here. And let's go and do the Shift tab to bring a bunch of our parts back. And let's go and get that handle. So if I want all three of these parts to be in their own sub-assembly together, in fact, let's take a look at the tree. So that's one part highlighted in blue, and that's another part, and that's another part, all scattered throughout the tree. So I'm going to do Control to pick all three of them, right-click, and then I have the option to form new sub-assembly. That, in the past, you had to come over, right-click, select them individually in the tree, and then get them. So this is another one of those time savers. So it seems to me like a lot of time saver items that they've added for this release. Alright, so we'll do the form new subassembly. Ask for the name if I've got it set to always create physical parts or physical assemblies, or it'd create a virtual subassembly if you have that set. And again, that's another option in our assemblies here. So options, assemblies, save components, and external files. You can go either way. Normally I think this is unchecked, so it'll create them as virtual subassemblies. Okay. Alright, so we got that one. Smart fasteners, that one's just a brief one to mention the fact that you can actually do smart fasteners, recognize mirrors and patterned holes now. So that'll actually save you a little bit of time where you don't have to pick the original seed. Folders we took care of. Oh, yeah, open the part and don't want to save the changes. That's another good one. So I'm going to open up this individual part. Alright, so suppose you go into a part, you make some changes. We'll go and unsuppress this feature that I was working on. And maybe just before you go back to the top level, you realize, I don't really want that change to take place. In 2011 and older, even if I closed it and said no to save changes, it would still show the new model in the assembly, and I'd have to actually reload the assembly to get that to actually go away, or that change to disappear. So they finally have caught up to what we were needing. So I'm going to close this. It's asking to save changes, no. So I say no there. So this is where we actually get that additional dialogue. Do we want to keep or discard those changes? In the past, it would just automatically put those changes in the assembly. So I'm going to go and discard them, and you'll see that we'll have our original part there. And again, this is one of those annoyances that they've been able to take care of for us. Alright, so let's go back to our slides. Alright, so this is the other part of Assemblies, is they've done the large assembly design review. For me, I think that's kind of a big transition from the selective open. Being able to use a lot of the other items. So if you select something in the feature tree or on the model, it shows up. You can actually still get information from the assembly expert. You can hide stuff. You can isolate. Walkthroughs are still done. Snapshots is a new one. So you can actually take snapshots of stills there. And then we can also do measuring and everything else there. So it's kind of like e-drawings inside of SOLIDWORKS, especially for large assemblies. So let's go and take a look at SOLIDWORKS here. Alright, I'm going to close out of a couple items here. And we'll leave that one minimized. I do need to go in through the open dialog box for this one. So we do have to use the open just to get the modes. So these are the different modes that are listed there. So we've got the resolve, the lightweight, large assembly, essentially just like it used to be, rather than the check marks that we used to have. But then we have the large design review mode. So I'll go and do an open on that. Wait for it to load here, but it is much faster than trying to load a fully resolved subassembly. Okay, I'll go and let it do some updates here. And then looking at the model, we do have the shaded with edges. We do also have the regular shade mode. We can still rotate the model, zoom in on the model, and be able to see all the other stuff that's going on with the model. So all that stuff is still there. Some of the other items that you can do with this is if I select on a part, it'll actually select in the tree, so we do actually see that showing up at the same time there as well. So all that stuff does coherently stay together. If I go up here and grab the assembly expert, I do still get the assembly expert information on the model, so I do have the ability of viewing all the information there on the model as well. I can also hide structures, so I'm going to have the ability of doing that as well. So I can actually just see the section that I'm wanting to work on. If I switch over to my Display Manager tab, so this is the new one for 2011, I've got the ability of doing my walkthroughs or my the new snapshots. If I right click, I can edit the walkthrough, and then I can go and play the recording there, and I actually get the ability of actually viewing the walkthrough while I'm in this large assembly design review, without having to have the model fully loaded there. Alright, so we're going to close out of that. Some of the other items with the snapshots, if I double click on one of the snapshots, it takes me directly to that particular orientation and view. And then it also controls the hide state. So if I zoom out here a little bit, you'll see that the top level of the structure is missing, whereas when I go back to the other mode, you can see all that's still there. So it does allow you to control the hide state. I do have the ability of selecting on faces. I can do section views. I can also do measure. So if I wanted to measure a distance between some components, so maybe between there and the part, I can see that I don't have enough room to get my bolt out. So that's one of the items that are there as well. But I'll go and open up one of the sub-assemblies here. So I'm going to open up, so I select on the part, highlights in the tree. So I'll go and open up this sub-assembly, and it opens up in a fully resolved state. So I have the ability of actually working on it, and I'll go and make a change here. Go and push that out to maybe something a little bit larger, just so I have the ability of getting the bolt out of that particular piece. Okay, so I get the clearance there now. Close out of the assembly, and I'll go and save the changes, and then it'll actually push the changes out to the large assembly while it's in the design review mode there. I'll let it update the graphics here. So I definitely see that it's going to be a big time saver for the transitions and type of stuff that we're actually needing to do in larger assemblies like this, and should definitely save quite a bit of effort and everything else here. Alright, so I'm going to go and close out of this, and let's go and move on to the next slide here. Configurations. You're able to actually make changes. I think I briefly mentioned that in the other assembly, so we can make changes on configurations that aren't active, and then also we can do equations per configuration now too. You could kind of do a little bit of that, but they've really expanded on that. In fact, let's go and jump right into the equations section here. Alright, so completely redesigned interface. They've given us essentially 3 different modes: equation view, dimension, and overview, or order view. They've also added an automatic solve, also an automatic rebuild. In the past, you used to have to do like Control Q multiple times to get the rebuild to take correctly. Don't need to do that anymore. Global variables, so you can do that with comments, create equations with variables, functions. There's even a new measure, creates a reference dimension. I'll show that as well. Dimension and rename and modify box, so I'll talk about that again. Equations on the fly within the modify box. Do have undo and redo operations in the equation. Everything's color-coded too, so you can actually see what's valid, what's invalid, what's in process. And then also they've expanded the linking to a text file option there. So let's go and open up that assembly here that we're going to be working on. Alright, so I'm going to open up a single part here. And it does actually respond or react about the same in assemblies as well. There is a slightly different modify box with the assemblies, but a couple of things to point out. You'll see that we have the names of the primary values on the dimensions. That's always been around. In fact, let's go and show where that's at here. If we go up to the view menu, dimension names, that's been around for a few versions at least, and maybe longer. So if I shut that off, it gets rid of the naming there. But we'll go and turn that back on. That's just a useful thing to help keep yourself organized. The ability of showing all the dimensions, that also has been around for a while. It's the right click over the annotations folder, display annotations. So that's a great way of looking at all the dimensions in the screen there. I'm just doing this more for illustration's sake at this point. But let's go and take a look at the equations folder and kind of see how all this stuff works. So you right click over the equations folder, we go manage equations, and this is the new equations box. You can see that it's kind of had a fairly major overhaul there. We start out with our global variables at the top, and if I needed to add one, real easy to do that. Just type that in, give it a value. Okay. Give it a comment if I wanted to. So all that stuff's real useful. Features, we can actually change the suppression state of a feature and stuff in here. Then we also have our equations list. So this is the first tab, the equations view. If I go to the next tab, this is actually all the dimensions in the part. Or if it was the assembly, it would be all in the assembly. So it actually gives you what it's evaluated to and where it's getting its information from. So we can see most of these are hard values, but then we have a few that are actually dimensioned out. we do have an error here just because of things are occurring in a different order, but we'll come back to that as well. Go and switch over to the last tab, and this is just our equations and linked values box here. So we have the thickness and then equating out to 5, and we've got our global variable there. Global variable essentially is almost like the linked value, so it's kind of one and the same, but you do still have linked values. But if I want to change the order here, I actually have automatic solve orders. So as soon as I turn this check mark on, you'll see that it'll actually reverse the order and fix our ordering issue there. And then I'll also go and do a automatic rebuild, so I don't have to stop and think about the model every single time. Alright, so let's go and create a new equation here. You can do it within this box, or you can do it outside of the box. You know what? Let's go and hit OK here for the moment, and let's go and rename one of the dimensions. So I'm going to call this maybe width. In the past, in fact, let me go show the old method. So if I select a dimension, came over here, I could change the primary value. That was the old way. You can still do that, but if I double click on the dimension, I get my little modify box, and then I can go in here. Okay, give that a name, and I could change the value if I wanted, but now I've got a naming for that. So from here, I can actually go and create my equation there. Alright, so I'm going to go, actually, let's go and truncate that rather than width. It should be width. Alright, so there we go. And let's go and create our equation. So I'm going to go back to the equations folder, go and manage the equation. I'm going to go and say the spacing. I'll go and select that. Let's see if I can get this all on the screen here at the same time. Select in my box, pick on my dimension, single left click. From here I can do a few things. I can go to global variables, I can go to functions, file properties, so you have access to a lot of the built-in file properties now, and then a measure. We'll get to that one as well. But I'm going to set up an equation. In fact, I've already typed this one off to the side here, so I'm just going to copy and paste it. And watch the spacing. See how the one hole isn't quite all the way over to the edge there? I'm just going to go and paste in this equation. Notice we still get the green check mark accepting it, and then now that spacing is modified there. If I switch over to my dimensions, and I'll go look for my overall width, I'll go and change that up to maybe 200. And then you'll see that the model changes, and then my spacing for my model changes as well. So all that happens because the auto rebuild and the auto solve there. So a lot of useful items that they've put in there. Let's see. Global variables. Yeah, let's go and do the measure here. Alright, so I'm going to do maybe a new one. Let's go and do... Do I have... Let's rotate this down so I can see it. Yeah, let's go and do the depth here. So the depth is essentially whatever we want it to be, but I'm going to tell it to make a measurement from 2 holes. I'm going to go measure. And what it does is it gives me my measure tool, which... let's see. There we go. Okay, so I got my cursor. I'll go and just pick one of the holes here, and I'll go and go over to the other hole. Oh, let's see, I need to grab a flat face here. That might be easier for, just because I'm trying to do a dimension the other way. Let's try that one more time. So overall depth, there we go, measure. Alright, so I'm just going to go do the same as the width here. So I'm going to pick the one side, rotate it up, pick the other side, and go and drop that off to the side there. Notice that it makes a reference dimension, RD1, and that now becomes the linked or the value of the other one. So now, if I look at my other, you'll see that it is also that same. So if I make a change to the overall width of this part, let's change that. Oh, I got to get out of the modify box there. This is also one of those things that you'll probably play with a little bit as you kind of get used to it. Oh, there we go. So I'm going to go and change that up to 90. Do a rebuild here. Then you can see that the other one updates as well too. So all that stuff's kind of happening in the background as well. The linked value box or linked text file, that's also there as well. So I have this option to do an export of the file, or down below I have this linked to external file. And the advantage of the link to external file is it gives you the real ability of using one text file to control a bunch of different parts. You might use it for an envelope of a workspace. You might use it for a few other things. You can use it, link it to an existing one, or we'll go and create a new one here. So I'm just going to go and put one up on my desktop. Give it a name. And I'll go and link there. Okay. Oh, let's see. Let's see, hold on one sec. Yeah, it's not like in the desktop. I'm going to go and give it a folder here. Let's give it a extension. Oh, let's see, I'm completely off base here. Link to create new. There we go. I was way off base there. Kept on flopping back to the other one there. Alright, and we're going into that folder. So I'm going to go... Yep. Things are just getting away from me here. Okay, there we go. Link to value. Okay. Finally got the file to create there. I'll go and bring that one up here. Alright, so there's my text file. So it actually goes through and grabs all my stuff that's in my equations. I'll put that off to the side here so you can actually see it. So I could make changes here and they would populate back into my parts. Notice that the column there between evaluate and comments also gives you the fact that it's linked back to a text file. So you could uncheck it and then have it independent rather than being driven by the text file. So this might be another way of doing the grouping there. Do have one question here as far as the ability of doing an Excel file. It does only do text because that's more universal. You can open the text file in Excel, so you can do that, but it is just the text file that it'll do. Oh, and yeah, as far as dual monitor, yes, you can take that equation folder and shift it over to the other screen. So that is one of the options with that as well. So you can do two screens with that. All right. Let's see. Let's go and wrap things up here. And let's see. Is there anything else that we needed? Looks like we got everything covered. Oh, except for the very last one here, the modify box. If you want to do an equation on the fly, you can still do that. In the previous version, you hit the little down arrow, and then it would actually give you the option to link or the option to create an equation. Well, now all we have to do is actually hit an equal sign. In fact, you get that little balloon that pops up there. That was one of the items that I submitted for the beta points there during the beta testing, that they needed some way to tell the user. But so I can just hit the equal sign there, and then notice that I've got the global variables, functions, file properties, all that actually all populates in here. So I could say, not that it really matters, but I'm going to link it to the mass there. So the length of that or the width of that is actually going to be equal to whatever the weight of it is. Which is kind of a round robin there, because every time I rebuild it's going to keep on getting bigger. But But you get the idea. You can do the equation still in the modify box there. Alright, let's switch back to the PowerPoint one more time. And so at this point, looks like we've got everything completed for this section.